We call on members' order of the day number 4.
Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Bill number 3, first reading.
I call Alfred Ngaro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour to be able to speak in the House on Members' Day, and particularly to speak for the Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Bill number 3. Mr. Speaker, it's always a privilege and to have a ballot that's drawn out of to have a bill that's drawn out of the ballot, and in this case, I have to first of all acknowledge that actually the bill was under the name of the Honourable Maggie Barry. And just to acknowledge the fact then to be able to have taken that bill on, but still to be able to have a private member's bill in the House is quite an honour. Often when members' bills are in the House from another member given to the other, one looks for the connection. And so for this case, Mr. Speaker, in 2010 I was a candidate for Citizens and Ratepayers and stood for the first of the Auckland Council elections. And was at that time, that was my first experience in actually standing for a local government position. And it was that time that I realised that actually the issue around the Auckland Council was the ability around 7 territorial authorities to come together, the hope that the sense of unification would bring greater gains for Auckland as a whole. And so I, along with a number of others, actually did that. And so to me, the Auckland Council has been one of those situations where we've seen where there should be greater gains. The aspects around Auckland planning creates one single strategic spatial plan for 20 to 30 years. You know, there are a number of things that I think are important, which actually goes to the heart of this bill. So this bill, in its purpose, is to improve fairness of the local electorate system by prohibiting candidates from serving on more than one local board at the same time. Mr. Speaker, we know that local boards play an important role, and so though we have the governing body, the local boards are in a position where they're able to work with local communities to distribute funds that are much needed in a way that does make a difference. That's despite the executive, the governing body as well. But in fairness, Mr. Speaker, one of the issues that has come up, and hence the reason for this bill, is the provision that's in there that allows for the ability for members or people to be able to be present on one or more local boards. And I will draw the Speaker and also to the House to the attention that the Local Government Auckland Council Act of 2009 starts off in its provision, prohibits a person from being both a member of a local board and the governing board. They can be a candidate for both, but governing body election has precedence if elected to both. And here's the point of this bill, Mr. Speaker, which is to tighten that loophole. It does not prohibit a person from being a member of more than one local board. And so I think that's really important and is the intent of this bill. Mr. Speaker, members will also see that there is a supplementary order paper, which is quite strange because when a bill is entered in, it should actually contain all the clauses that are important. But what actually happened there was an administrative error, Mr. Speaker, and so when the bill went in, it was incorrect and did not have a clause that was important. So clause number 6, that is actually in the supplementary order paper, and provides a savings clause to ensure that the existing membership of 2 or more local boards is not affected by the commencement of this bill. In other words, which could force a by-election. And so, Mr. Speaker, that's why that was important that the supplementary order paper was an administrative error. However, we think that it's important that this should be included as well. One of the things that also is important, we know that this is a bill that has widely support, as I've canvassed around and talked to some of the members throughout Parliament. It has support because it's important that it goes to the Select Committee. We know it will go to the Local Government and Environment Select Committee, and ably chaired by my colleague here, Scott Simpson. And there then we'll be able to hear submissions to be able to talk about what's important and how that we can look at the bill, hear submissions, whether there are potentially clauses that need to be changed or added to that. But I think it's also a great opportunity to look and to review parts of that bill as well, Mr. Speaker. I know that in 20th October 2010, there was a media statement that was put forward by Mr. Phil Twyford. And in that media statement, in their press release in October of 2010, it entitled "Labor Proposes Amendment to Close Flaunty Loophole." Quite a sort of, a a provocative title, but it was really to talk about this loophole that was there. It states and reads, the Labour Party will move an amendment to local government law to prevent local board members from sitting on more than one board in the Auckland Super City. Labour's Auckland Issues spokesperson Phil Twyford said the case of West Auckland pharmacist Warren Flaunty sitting on 5 boards showed there was a loophole and that should be closed. So we know that there is support for this, especially to go to the Select Committee and for us to be able to then debate the issues that are important to this bill. Mr. Speaker, this is not a bill that will save the Auckland City. It's a bill that will actually then address, I think, a concern that has been had. What is important that the local body elections then will allow for a greater distribution for those to be representative on those local boards. We know that it is a little unfair that people in that situation where they're on 2 or more, in some cases they've been on 3 or more, it doesn't allow for wider representation throughout the city, so we think that's really important. In my conversations even today and talking to the leader of the ACT Party, David Seymour, he did say to me and did question that, is this something that we should be doing? Shouldn't we just allow where there is adequate information that could be out there, that people could see that when they look at a person who is representing them on the local board and maybe they actually didn't represent their concerns, they weren't doing a good enough job, wasn't that enough? In our conversations, though, I did say that not only do we have challenges in our general election around participation, but even in the local bodies, we've noticed that there's been a decline in participation, especially around postal voting. So there are challenges, Mr. Speaker, to participation. So in order for us to be able to ensure that we don't have a loophole where there isn't sufficient representation, we should act accordingly. And so hence the reason for this bill. This bill does remedy the loophole. We think that's important in the current legislation. In the Local Electoral Act of 2001, it states that it prohibits a person from being both a member of a community board and a territorial authority. And they can be a candidate, but a council has precedence if elected to both. So further on down, it says in more than one ward, the same territorial authority or more than one constituency of the same regional council for both of a regional council and territorial authority or community board within that region. However, and again, here's the point, which could mean that out of this, there could have further conversation around potential amendments to the Local Electoral Act of 2001. It does not prohibit a person being a member of more than one community board. So we believe that there are loopholes not only in the Local Government Auckland Council Act of 2009, potentially there could be other conversations around the Local Electoral Act of 2001 as well. And so, Mr. Speaker, this bill attempts to be able to close that loophole and provide the opportunities which are really important for wider representation as well. Mr. Speaker, I'm really fortunate that in our caucus we've got a number of members who've had senior representation. In fact, sitting right next to me is the previous mayor, or should I call you ex-mayor, or your worship, John O'Naylor, who was the Mayor of Palmerston North, and even sharing in his experiences the importance of representation, both on the local boards and community boards, but also too on council. And so I know that he's going to add a great amount of knowledge and wisdom to the debate as well. Also too, further across over here, my honourable member and colleague Nuka Kurako, who also stood down, and I think it was down in Christchurch. So he too has experience of wanting to stand and represent our communities on our local boards as well. So, Mr. Speaker, we believe, and I believe, that this is a bill that is small in nature, however, has the opportunity for us to have a conversation around some of the challenges around this loophole as well. So, no, this is a good bill. We look forward to the conversations as it heads to Select Committee. My understanding that it will be supported across the House, and as it goes to Select Committee to hear submissions as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I do commend this bill to the House.